This is a topic you may or may not have heard of. It's called blockchain. And let's see here. Why is PowerPoint here? That's not what I wanted. There it is. Oh, I know why. Give me a break here. All right, this is where I wanted to start. There's actually 4 files with a single lecture. There's a lot of different slides in this, but I'm hoping that by showing it to you from different perspectives, the concepts and the importance of blockchain will become clear. So let's get started. So first, we're going to start with the PowerPoint that talks about the principles or what blockchain really is. And before I dive in, I don't want you to approach this with the idea that you really need to understand how it works. I want you to understand what it is, why it is important in a number of industries, including agriculture. So, step 1, what is blockchain? A blockchain is a tamper-evident shared digital ledger that records transactions in a public or private peer-to-peer network. So let's take that apart. Tamper-evident doesn't mean it's tamper-proof. Somebody can tamper with it. The problem is it's virtually impossible to tamper with it in a way that is not evident, that you can't see it. So any record that has any evidence of tampering, intentional or accidental, will not be trusted. It will be discarded. And this can be done publicly, and it can be done privately. You can have an internal system. You can use it at any scale on any network you want, big, small, whatever. But the joy, the usefulness is that all of the transactions are recorded in such a way that you can be virtually absolutely certain that any transaction that you recognize that has not been tampered with is a valid transaction record. So it's distributed to all member nodes in a network. So you set up the network and every single node gets a copy of the transaction, every single transaction. The ledger permanently records in a sequential chain of cryptographic hash-linked blocks, meaning every time there's a transaction in the system, it goes to every single network node in the system. It goes everywhere. So if somebody tries to tamper with it, they'd have to tamper with every single one. And they can't. And so if you do have something tampered with, you can see the records of the ones that weren't tampered with. It's in a sequential chain, meaning it's just a series of transactions, just a ledger. You get a new record, new record, new record of everything that happens. And it gets to be a lot of information, but there are tools to summarize that information. It's also cryptographic hash-linked blocks. What the heck does that mean? That means they use special coding, secret codes. And the cryptographic means it's secret. So if anybody tries to read it, it's in code. It is, so if you send this blockchain information across the internet, it just looks like a bunch of garbage. Nobody can read it without the unlock key, and it's extremely secure. So not only is it tamper resistant, but it's coded and secure. And the hash link is part of how you determine if it's been tampered with or not. Don't worry about how that works. The history of assets exchanges that take place between the peers in the network. So whatever that means, it can be anything. Okay? So go back and reread this, re-watch my video, but this statement is really important. It's a great summary of what blockchain is. Just keeping a track of every single thing that happens that can be considered a transaction. You buy something, you sell something, you move something, you harvest something, you process something, you package something. Whatever you do, everything you do that is part of the blockchain, that you want to be part of this blockchain, is recorded and goes out to everybody in the blockchain. And it's coded and secured in such a way that everybody's got duplication of record, is duplicated as massively as you want. And it can't be read or tampered with along the way. If the technology is so complex, why call it blockchain? At its most basic level, blockchain is literally just a chain of blocks, but not in the traditional sense of those words. When we say the word block and chain in this context, we are actually talking about digital information, the block, stored in a public database, the chain. Now, when you say public, maybe it truly is public, and we'll get into that, some examples in a moment, but it can be something that anybody could potentially access, or it could be public only as far as you want, something internal. So it's public within your organization or public among your customers or whatever. It doesn't have to go to the broader public. So the challenge, visibility across the supply chain. So we're now looking at agriculture. We have the producer's record. Somebody grows broccoli, and you want to make certain records public to show that information out there can verify when something was grown, when it was harvested, what variety it is, the food safety records, all of those things you want to share. Now, another beauty of this is you can set up a system where certain records are only kept internally, like how much fertilizer you used and when. That might be a trade secret for your company. You don't want that part of the blockchain, so you don't include it in the blockchain. So now you've got somebody who's distributing your product. You sell it and that person distributes it. Maybe you've got some wholesaler, some supplier, some consumer information, and the retail stores like Safeway, Nob Hill, Food for Less, whatever. Now you've got visibility for all of those pieces of information, and you can set up a user interface in a way that only those records you want to be seen at a given level can be seen. Because remember, all of this is coded. So I can have a consumer interface that only shows those things I want the consumer to be able to see. I don't want them to see sales and pricing information that went to my wholesalers, right? You don't want to reveal your business transactions, but the consumer can see other details that might be useful. So all of this information is available as just blocks of data in a sequential database, blockchain. So with blockchain, instead of having all of these complex interactions, you saw before how many lines there were of interaction. Now blockchain handles it all very effectively. Blockchain provides the shared, replicated, permissioned ledger. So again, the permissions say who gets to see what, who has the key to unlock what pieces of blocks in that chain or database. With consensus provenance, immutability, and finality. So everybody agrees, and it's in a safe and reliable format. Now there is a problem because everything is so highly duplicated. Some forms of blockchain are not energy efficient. They are extremely effective, but depending on how the blockchain system is set up and what type of information, it is waking up potentially hundreds or thousands of computers with every single transaction to record these things. And so it multiplies a single database transaction that would traditionally go to a single computer and be a single transaction to potentially thousands of transactions, thousands of notifications exploding out to every node in the network. It takes a lot of energy when you add that up. In some cases, something more contained, like what we see here in agriculture, yeah, it uses more energy than a traditional database, more electrical energy, fossil fuels to run the electrical grid to run all of these computers, but it's not an amount that's going to change much in terms of how much energy a company in the chain uses. And this is one of the confusions. Bitcoin. I hope you've heard of Bitcoin. It's been in the news a lot. Bitcoin is not the same as blockchain. Oops. Bitcoin uses blockchain. Bitcoin is an example of an unpermissioned public ledger. In other words, you can't go in and read the individual blocks in the database, in the ledger. You can't go in and see who's buying what, but there is a ledger there, and it's out there, and anybody can see the encrypted ledger. It's useless unless you have the keys. So Bitcoin was the first significant blockchain application. It's now quite controversial. There's billions of dollars being transacted, and people have lost millions and made millions, losing millions. One very prominent story, you could look it up, but some executive forgot his password to his Bitcoin. There's no way to get it back. You can't go into the bank and show your ID. There's nothing. You either have your password or you don't. You got your password, you got your money. You don't have your password, there's no way in hell you will ever see that money. There's no place to go, no way to prove it. There's no direct link that money is yours except through the password. He lost millions because he forgot his password. The other thing is Bitcoin is so huge and global that it is mind-boggling how much electricity is run, how much heat is generated, how many cooling systems air conditioning systems are required in these databases that get hot. Computer rooms, there's computer farms, otherwise known as the cloud. These computer farms are massive rooms that generate huge amounts of heat that have to be cooled off with fans and air conditioning units because they get so damn hot in there. Bitcoin exploded database requirements for managing all of these transactions because every transaction, and there are millions of these transactions every day, are being sent out to, and I don't even know what the number is. I'm assuming it's probably tens of thousands of different computers. So you take millions multiplied by tens of thousands of computers all duplicating that information, and the energy use for Bitcoin is huge. One of the issues that is, I guess, the negative side of the blockchain model. Anyway, blockchain is just a tool used by Bitcoin. It's not the same thing. Blockchains for business are generally permission and private. So they're not out there like Bitcoin. They're generally, most blockchains are in the company's network. And, you know, I don't know if Bank of America uses blockchain in some way for their banking records, but it's totally internal if they do. And I'll give you some examples of companies that use blockchain. I'm only familiar with the ag stuff. And with the ag stuff, it's mostly private. Most of the information is private. Can you release some of that information to the public? Yeah, I already mentioned that. You can release certain information to the consumer. So let's take a quick break